Hi, I've been meaning to make this video for quite some time. It's a big passion of mine to bring awareness to autism, and today I want to talk about sensory processing disorder. In order to be diagnosed autistic, there's three main areas that you have to have a level of disability in. One of those is restrictive repetitive interests. One of those is social differences and processing differences. And then the third one is sensory processing disorder. Now, some people, when they think of a sensory processing disorder, they might just imagine somebody covering their ears, or they might imagine somebody who doesn't have a sense of danger. And it's the collectively issue of those things I want to talk about today. So I've made a chart which I think is opposite, and it's a very amateur chart. This is why I haven't made my video, because I've been meaning to print something out that looks a bit better than this. So when you are thinking of somebody with a sensory processing disorder, often you will think, okay, well, they don't seem to struggle with that, so I'm not sure they're autistic, or I don't really see this thing as a big struggle. So what I want to do is have you think of, instead of just, okay, they have these few issues, I want you to think about your child and where they struggle. Because the interesting thing about this is that you can have sensory processing disorder as a standalone diagnosis. You don't actually have to be autistic to have a sensory processing disorder. But more importantly, every single child can have a level of need and a level of struggle with the senses without being autistic, without having a sensory processing disorder. And when you understand that, you can support that and help your child in all areas because of simply supporting that thing. So here I've done a list of all the senses. So I've got hearing, taste, touch, smell, sight, and then the extra senses, which are proprioception and vestibular and interoception. So when you are thinking about a typical person, this is how a typical person experiences hearing. They hear sounds. If it's too loud, they move away. If it's quiet, not loud enough, then their brain can let them know so that they can go, oh, I can't quite hear that. Can you turn it up? So for people with a sensory processing struggle, this can swing both ways. So over here, you can have people that cannot tolerate sound at all. So even talking can be painful, and the sounds are so painful for them that they need to have this is obviously when you see the ear defenders, and they're really, really useful for this kind of level 3, so severe. But you can have level 2 where actually you can manage conversations and you can manage certain things, but actually you get overwhelmed by sounds and you find it quite overwhelming, and you can't really concentrate and talk when you're hearing things. So you'd still have quite a high level of need. And then there's level 1 needs, where it's actually you're just sensitive. You are oversensitive than most people, but you can manage generally. You can just get through, kind of thing. So if you're scoring it this way, you can see the level of need within the hearing processing of that sense. But likewise, it goes over here. So over here in level 3, you would have loud, very, very loud noises and zero reaction to them. So an example, one of my children was on the beach as a young child, an aeroplane came soaring over and he didn't look up, he didn't notice, while the whole beach was going, wow. And obviously they gave him a hearing test to see that his hearing was fine, but actually, yeah, hearing's fine, it's a processing thing. So that put him over there in that area. Whereas I've got children who have hearing, who are autistic, diagnosed autistic, who are all the way over here, and they really struggle with noises, and they need ear defenders, and they would never manage a concert, and they wouldn't manage a lot of things that involve loud. So this applies to all the senses. You can think of each and every different sense. So obviously taste, this over here, the sensitive to taste. This can be level 3, and these are the children that you see with a condition called ARFID, where they really cannot tolerate tastes, textures, and all of those things. They just literally just cannot cope with them. With ARFID, there can be other issues at hand that can be to do with processing as well. But when you are thinking of this hypersensitivity to taste, that's when you can put the levels there as well, and you can say, okay, so where is my child with the sense of taste? Where do they score? And then likewise over here, They can have really strong tastes, and they can seek them as well. So they are desiring the really spicy foods and those kind of things, and it can be because they're more over there. So again, if you were talking about your child, you go, okay, where am I scoring my child? And really think in multiple settings to really get an idea of how they react. Now, next you've got touch. So you have children that desire no touch, don't want to be touched at all. And then you've got children over here who are in your space and they're unaware of how close they are to you, or which is a processing thing, whereas you have touch in the sense of desiring touch, seeking touch, having that really tactile need. And then you have smells, and one of my children is all the way over there, and he's like, I do not know what you're cooking for dinner. I literally can't tell the difference. And I get really excited and I think, yes, it's this food. And they come down and it's chicken nuggets or fish fingers, and it's just not what he wanted. And likewise, I have a different autistic child who's all the way up here, and certain smells make him really nauseous. And going into shops like with selling products and shampoos, just literally just can't tolerate it whatsoever. So obviously that'll help you score them, kind of thing. And when you are talking in terms of a disability, obviously it's not just a really simple preference. We're not talking about preferences here, like, oh no, I prefer nice soft cotton. We're talking about, okay, I literally physically can't touch that fabric. I can't manage it to the extent that it makes them ill. So if you have a sensory issue with clothes and touching them, it's literally akin to nails down a chalkboard. Now, obviously, nails down a chalkboard or chewing balloons is a horrible sensation, and having that sensation over and over and over and over again throughout the day because you're feeling your own clothes, that's when you go, oh, okay, this is a disability. This is there's a true need there. So that is what you're trying to identify when you do a sensory screener. You're really looking for where your child is struggling. And say you have a typical child, they can process typically, they can read the higher level language, they don't want to line everything up, and they don't want to do the same things over and over again. But they struggle severely with touch, textures and fabrics, and they're like, I need all my labels cutting out. I cannot manage these clothes. One of my children said, if I wear rugby socks, I will be sick. I can't wear them. Like, I literally can't. And the school were very happy for him to have a reasonable adjustment. But say you have that typical child with that disability in that one area. So, yep, level 3, hypersensitivity, touch. That still needs supporting. It's still really important, because if you're aware of that, what we can tend to do is going, oh, no, we can just push that. No, you've got to get used to it. This is what everybody does. But actually, if you were experiencing nails down a chalkboard repeatedly throughout the day, how do you feel at the end of the day? Exhausted. It's not like that stops. You can't get used to nails down a chalkboard or chewing rubber. It doesn't actually stop for autistic people. Those experiences just repeat and repeat and repeat throughout the day, and it just can make them absolutely exhausted. So the next sense is sight. And obviously this is things like the hypersensitive is obviously bright lights are genuinely painful. And then again, you have children who are not reacting, so zero reacting to the light changes and these kind of things. So I'm not going to go into the other ones in this video, just because I really want to stick to the basics. But what I really wanted to identify is, have a think of your child or an autistic child that is in your life. Where do they score? Where are their support needs collectively? It can help you realise that actually there is probably a lot more need than you realise for an autistic child, because in order to be diagnosed, they do screen this, they do look for these sensory differences, and it isn't just one little thing here. You know, it's you see these videos and they're like, oh, this is what autistics are like, and then it has this kind of slight thing, and then people are thinking everybody's like this, everybody has these things. But when you are dealing with an autistic spectrum disorder or a sensory processing disorder, we are talking a lot of overhears. You know, we're talking about an actual support need in the sensory system. So just remember that for an autistic person to be diagnosed autistic, there has to be a sensory processing disorder as well. So that is a genuinely support need in the senses. So the interesting thing is, When you have, another interesting thing is when you have the hypersensitive, this can often be visible in the sense that the child is expressing the problem. So they're saying, this is too loud, this hurts, you know, I don't want the socks, I don't want the taste, I don't want the foods, this is, and all of these things. Now, there's a tendency for people to think, oh, there's just a bit sensitive there, they need to get used to it, and it's not a big deal, you know, and then they sort of want to push to encourage that. But if you think all the way to the other side, then you can think, okay, these children are not identifying the pain, they're not aware of the touch, they're not aware of the smells, they're not processing it. Now, can you force them to do that? Can you go, right, if we put them in more smells, put them with more foods, if we you know, give them loud sounds, are they going to start processing them? So no, they're not. Suddenly, you know, we'll give them more sounds and then they'll turn, and then their brain will go, aha, this is sound. You know, it's an area of their processing that is very different, and it is not wired up typically. So likewise, for the oversensitive people, it's an area of difference. It's a processing thing. It's not a conscious choice. It's not something that you can just go, we will push them through it and then they'll change. It will change. It's true neurowiring as a sensory processing disorder and support need that is there. So I hope that covers enough of the sensory system. I'm going to do another video about likening it to something that will hopefully help you understand how we can support this more. Okay, thanks guys, bye.